by what they offered at Jesus' dedication. Remember, after the 8 days were up, they were supposed to, for a male born, they had to go redeem something. And typically, what did they redeem? Yeah, a lamb or something. But what did Jesus and them redeem? A couple of turtle doves. And you know, if you go back and read in the law, that was an exemption given to people that just couldn't afford anything. So we tend to think, you know, that's why I always say in the Christmas story, they show Mary riding a donkey coming in. Hey, listen, I seriously doubt it. She probably walked that route. Not everybody could afford to have a vehicle back then. A poor family from a small town is how God chose to bring to earth King of Kings and Lord of Lords. What did he come riding into Jerusalem on in his great entrance? Huh? Of a donkey. You know, I don't think all that was a mistake. I think God is just fulfilling what he said right here in his word. He likes to take small things and do great things with it. The Jews overlooked him, didn't they? Even those that were waiting for him thought surely he would come with a lot more pomp and glory and, you know, into his kingdom, and he needed to do big marvel and all, but he came in quietly through a small town and a small family. You and I would have probably never designated it so, but God did. God sent his son in a very small way. And so I have noticed that God, when he chooses to use people or he chooses places, he doesn't always choose what we do. We tend to overlook the little things. We tend to choose what's bigger and better and more popular and has more fame. That's just man's way. But it's not God's way. You remember I told you one time that it amazes me how God even considered the minute details of his creation. You know, we tend to see beautiful sceneries and forests and trees and mountaintops and huge mountains, and we just in awe. But sometimes I've gotten to where lately I tend to look at the smaller details of things, and I'm in the same awe, even sometimes more so. I'll take a little flower and begin to look at it real up close and begin to see the beautiful design and the colors, and I'm going, man. And especially if you've studied any biology or science, and people that go down deeper even to the molecular level of something and how it's designed, you know, it really, excuse my language, but it really takes an idiot to believe that all that just happened. You know, that just over billions of years all that just came together. You look at it and you know there's a designer, you know there's a creator. You can go out and watch nature and I love to go in an aquarium and just watch the thousands upon thousands of fish that exist, and all kinds of colors glowing and clear and just amazing at what God has done. There's a creator out there, even in creation, that down to the detail made some beautiful things, didn't he? Some awesome things. He made some details in nature and some ways that creatures live and subsist and work and do that's just amazing to consider. I mean, you watch a hummingbird. Some of you have hummingbird feeders. You ever watch one fly? I mean, I'm sitting there going, how in the world does he move his wings that fast? He has to eat all day long because he's consuming so much energy and just flying. And he just evolved like that. You believe that, Marcus? You believe he just turned out that way? No. God did it. And now science has the ability to go even deeper now on a DNA level and on nuclear levels. And man, God's given them enough intellect and wisdom to begin to research life in its capacity down to the most microscopic and even below microscopic form. And they're realizing there's a creator, there's a design, isn't it? And your DNA right now, God had set in there what your eye color would be, and your hair color, and your skin tone, and your size and shape, and everything about you God had coded ahead of time. And it's awesome. God's power is shown even in the smallest atomic particle. There's such an awesome energy there. And man now has enough knowledge through nuclear fusion or fission, whatever they call it, to release some of that energy. And we see the awfulness of an atomic or a nuclear explosion, don't we? and what it can do. Man's only able to do that with certain materials. But did you know that that same power is in everything around you? Do you know in that very wooden pew that there's still nuclear energy contained inside of that? Did you know that the Bible teaches that God's holding this whole world together in His awesome power? You know, all He'd have to do would be release it. Hey, I'm not worried about a nuclear war destroying this world. All God's got to do is turn loose His power and we're in trouble. The more I see that, I begin to wonder myself if that's not the way He can destroy it. Because He said there, and even the elements are going to be consumed with a fervent heat. God, all He'd have to do to even do that is just release all the energy He's got bound up together in the nucleus. That's the awesome God we serve. Look at the little details that He's put into life. Hey, if you can't see the big picture, try to stop and see the little picture. God hadn't even overlooked the smallest detail. He's awesome. Like I said earlier, Jesus once taught us that God cares about every time a sparrow falls to the ground. I love to hunt, and we enjoy eating deer meat. And I love to fish, enjoy catching fish. But you know, the older I get, and no, I'm not a tree hugger, and I'm not one of these environmentalists, but I do realize even now that every time I take a life of a creature, God's aware of it. He said He knew every time a sparrow fell to the ground. It didn't get past Him. He knew it. And I thought, boy, and He says, and aren't ye of much more value than many sparrows? He said He knows how many hairs we got on our head. Of course, with Brother Roger, that wouldn't take a lot of counting. But I can pick on him, my uncle. But that's amazing to me that God knows that much detail about me. More so than the fact that He knows it, that He cares. God doesn't overlook little things as man does. And you know what? He doesn't want us to overlook them. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, if you go back and read in the very first verses, there was a time that His disciples came to Jesus saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Who's going to be exemplary? Who's going to be the big shot? I always think it's very interesting what Jesus does. And Jesus called a little child unto Him and set him in the midst of them and said, verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Jesus said, you want to know who's the greatest? He said, come here, let me show you a little child. Nobody's going to get into heaven unless they humble themselves enough to have a child. That's what we call childlike faith. You ever heard somebody say that's what we mean? It's an humble faith. It means it's a total dependent faith, isn't it? Children are humble because at a certain point in their life they're totally dependent on their parents and on other people. Most of the time, up to a certain age, most children don't go around worrying about what they're going to eat or what they're going to wear. Hey, they just kind of depend on mom and daddy to do that, don't they? And they just kind of have an innocent trust into mom and daddy to take care of me. You know, God wants us to have the same trust in Him. You know why some people will never be saved? Because they never get off the point that it's not up to them to do anything but trust the Lord. Boy, Catholicism in Chile has taught a lot of people that too. They think they've got to go through certainly some kind of ritual or so many prayers or so many sacrifices. There's something surely I must do to appease God or to make God feel better about me. Let me tell you something. We were less than nothing in His sight, and worse than that, the Bible said we were His enemies. because of sin. God didn't love you because you deserved to be loved. God didn't notice you or care about you because you deserved it or somehow you could attain to that. The Bible said all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. God loved you just as you are. And God provided a way to forgive you. All He wants is for you to trust Him. And by the way, to please Him, that's still all He wants is faith. Without faith, it is what? Impossible to please Him. The list and there in the book of Hebrews of which we would call those heroes of faith, God wasn't just listing people because of their personal great accomplishments. He was listing people that trusted Him, that He could work through by faith. And as you go through the Bible and you see the people that God chose, not only that He saved, but those that He chose and called to use. I mean, all the way back to men like Moses. You know, for a while there, Moses, he grew up in Pharaoh's palace, as you know, and he had all the wisdom and riches of Egypt and so forth. But do you remember the first time that he would try to help out his people? How did he do it? He went and killed a man, didn't he? He got all upset, boy, and he couldn't believe this man was abusing one of the Hebrews and went over there and killed him. Well, the news got out, and he realized it was known what he had done. And you remember he takes off, and he goes back and lives in the wilderness for how long? 40 years on the backside of the wilderness tending to sheep and flocks. And by the way, if you read the Scripture in several places, you'll find out that shepherds were what to an Egyptian? An abomination. Basically, Moses became the garbage truck man. Okay? I mean, we'd probably, a lot of us say maybe probably one of the basest jobs you could do is go around hauling garbage or something or feeding pigs, sort of like the prodigal son. Well, let me tell you something. A shepherd to the Egyptians was just a low class socioeconomically. Well, here he went from Pharaoh's palace now out to doing the lowest job an Egyptian could do. And he did it for 40 years. Now, when God calls him, He calls him on the backside of this desert. And you remember when He appears to him, and you remember the whole story. Did Moses think he could handle this job? Well, say, oh yeah, Lord, you got the right man. No, Lord, I can't do that. I got a speech impediment, and I can't. Who am I? And they're not going to know who I am, and boy, they're not going to listen to me. And you remember everything God, excuse he had, God would show him, listen, it's not you anyway, it's going to be my power. Throw your rod down. Snake, ooh. Pick it up. Some said that would have been worse than throwing it down, having to pick it up again. Stick your hand in your bosom. Look there. Leprous. Take it back. Cling like a baby. God said, I've got the power, Moses. I'm going to choose to use you just like you are. God doesn't overlook the little things. And He tells us, listen, we better not overlook them. Jesus also said in Matthew 19, then they were brought unto Him little children, the Bible said. You remember that? They were having some grown-up conversation and preaching and teaching, and some people brought some little children. It says that He should put His hands on them and pray. And what did the disciples do? What we typically do. And they rebuked them. Oh, don't let them kids bother Jesus. He's busy right now. We're doing adult things. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm about to say. I do instruct and try to teach my children when adults are having a conversation. Don't come in and butt in the middle of it. Okay, I'm not teaching that principle. I think they need to learn to respect their elders. Okay, but sometimes we need to be careful not just to overlook children. I ask the Lord to help me to do that. Sometimes we sit in the back of the church and greet people on the way out, and you be in a conversation with an adult. A lot of times, children come up and be pulling on your leg or want to say something to you, and we lean down and kind of give them, yeah, that's sweet, bye-bye, and we don't pay attention to the word they say. I found out a